The Aztecs lived in a world full of color and spirituality, deeply connected to nature and the gods. Their daily lives were imbued with wonder, reflecting reverence and respect for the universe and religious principles. Life for a typical individual in the Aztec Empire was arduous, as in many ancient societies. While the wealthy could lead lavish lifestyles, common people often had to work tirelessly. Today, let's delve into the society and daily life of the Aztec people. Aztec society was highly stratified, with one social class determined at birth and typically remaining unchanged throughout life. There were three main classes in Aztec society: the nobility, the warrior class, and the commoners, which included merchants, artists, craftsmen, farmers, and slaves. While some individuals could advance through society through warfare or religious office, such opportunities were limited for most. The social mobility of a farmer rising through the ranks was extremely rare. At the top of Aztec society was the emperor, treated as a living god and served as such. Beneath him were the nobles, who managed land and the activities of the commoners. Nobles were also responsible for increasing war taxes and ensuring that farmers were trained to fight when the army summoned them to serve. All individuals in the Aztec Empire were trained for combat and ready to be summoned when needed. These farmer warriors were systematically trained and could be mobilized into the ranks of the Aztec army during a campaign. Thanks to this trained farmer class, the Aztecs could field large armies in battle, a tactic not commonly used by larger states in the region. The warrior class comprised men whose sole profession was fighting for the empire. In the Aztec Empire, all boys were trained for combat, but relatively few were full-time warriors, most coming from warrior families. The same was true for the priestly class. The wealthy in Aztec society lived in houses made of stone or sun-dried bricks, while the Aztec rulers resided in large palaces with multiple rooms and gardens. All the wealthy had their own bathrooms, similar to steam or dry sauna rooms. Bathing was an important part of daily life for the Aztecs. The poor lived in small huts with 1 or 2 rooms and thatched roofs made of palm leaves. They often had gardens nearby to grow vegetables and flowers. Inside the house, there were 4 main areas: a sleeping area where the family slept on mats placed on the floor, a cooking area, a dining area, and an area for worshiping the gods. Family structure was crucial for Aztecs. Husbands typically worked outside the home as farmer warriors or craftsmen, while wives stayed home to cook for the family and weave clothes. Children either attended school or helped with household chores. Aztec society operated under a patriarchal system, where the eldest man in the family typically governed household affairs and made most final decisions. Everyone in the family adhered to the supreme authority of the patriarch and his rule. For most people, daily life in Aztec society was orderly and secure. Marriage was compulsory in the Aztec Empire. Girls married around the age of 15, while boys a few years later, around 20. Aztec marriages were arranged by elders within a community. After marriage, the couple would live with the husband's family. Marriages in the Aztec Empire were not based on love, but on alliances and familial bonds. Women held significant power in Aztec society compared to many other places in the world at that time. They could own and inherit personal property, pursue careers as healers and educators. Although they were not considered equal in society, they could earn respect through self-education. However, this path to respect was not available to all peasant classes, except for the most intelligent and fortunate girls. The life of the Aztecs revolved around agriculture and warfare. They constantly bolstered their power through warfare, which largely shaped their overall culture. Most Aztecs were simple, safe, and stable farmers. Aztec farmers had access to a wider variety of foods than most European farmers. They also had the freedom to produce and trade goods without much government intervention. Aztec farmers formed the backbone of Aztec society, and although they were not equal to the upper class in any way, they were not mistreated either. Their labor was crucial to the smooth functioning of society, and as long as they worked, the Aztec elite seemed to have little interference in the lives of the farmers. The Aztecs were excellent farmers, and their agricultural methods are still used today. Aztec farmers utilized every piece of land available for cultivation. Aztec villagers built terraces to turn hillsides into fields and channel water for crop production. Aztec farmers had ambitious goals for crop production, to the extent that they even created floating islands called chinampas on giant rafts in the middle of lakes. Aztec farmers grew all kinds of crops, including tomatoes, beans, squash, peppers, and corn. The most valuable crop they cultivated was cotton. Cotton was highly important to the Aztecs. Their warriors wore thick cotton armor, while the elite wore intricately dyed and decorated cotton clothing. Surprisingly, cotton was not the most expensive commodity in the Aztec world. Vibrantly colored feathers were the most luxurious trade items in the Aztec world. For the Aztecs, feathers were more valuable than gold. The elite adorned themselves with feathers as a symbol of wealth, and very few commoners could afford them. In terms of daily activities, trade was prevalent among the Aztecs. Handcrafted goods produced in one end of the empire could be found in the homes of farmers at the other end of the empire. Most farmers were involved in producing items for the local market. Aztec farmers had access to nearly all types of commercial goods that the elite could access. They produced goods for trading to increase their income. As the Aztec Empire developed, land resources became limited, and farmers earned more income from trading goods rather than farming. Among the most common traded goods were obsidian, for making knives, cotton cloth, for clothing and wearing, and pottery. Of course, perishable goods, such as food, were also exchanged. Since the Aztecs did not have wheels or draft animals, all traded goods were transported by humans or boats. As a result, the Aztecs built a wide network of roads for relatively easy travel. However, due to the lack of animals for carrying, it is surprising that pottery was traded extensively due to its weight. In fact, pottery was traded from one end to the other of the empire, and even the poor seemingly owned both imported pottery and domestically produced pottery. Commerce seemed to be something that the state did not intervene in. Therefore, most farmers created commercial goods as a way to earn extra income. A third of a farmer's agricultural products were confiscated by the state, so farmers had to find other ways to provide for themselves as well as the state. Slaves were also traded throughout the empire. An Aztec slave could be a prisoner of war, but it was more likely to be a person caught stealing, which was a serious crime in the Aztec world, or a person gambling until they had to sell themselves into slavery. An Aztec slave had rights almost identical to everyone else, except that they had to work for their master. The slave could marry, own property, and operate a business. Men in Aztec society wore loincloths and long cloaks, while women wore dresses and long tunics. The poor often wove their own fabrics and made their own clothes, with the responsibility of clothing falling on the wife who would make the clothes. There were rules in Aztec society regarding clothing, including detailed laws governing what decorations and colors different classes could wear. For example, only the nobility could wear clothes decorated with feathers, and only the emperor could wear a sapphire-colored cloak. The main food in the Aztec diet was prepared similarly to corn. They ground corn into flour to make corn cakes. Other important staple items included beans and squash. In addition to these three main grains, the Aztecs also consumed various other foods including insects, honey, and snake meat. Perhaps the most valuable food item was cacao beans used to make chocolate. All Aztec children, by law, were required to attend school, including slaves and girls. The only exception at this time in history was when they were very young and received education from their parents, but by the time they reached adolescence, they attended separate schools for boys and girls. Girls learned about religion, including ceremonial songs and dances, as well as cooking and sewing. Boys typically learned farming or crafts such as pottery or featherwork. They also studied religion and combat like warriors. Aztec children were taught early on about proper behavior and conduct. It was important for Aztec children not to complain, disrespect elders, disturb sick adults, or interrupt punishments for rule violations. The most serious being that Aztec men married at the age of 20. They often didn't choose their spouse, as marriages were arranged by matchmakers. Once a matchmaker had selected two people to marry, both families had to agree. The Aztecs enjoyed playing games, and one of the most popular board games was called Patoli. Similar to many modern-day board games, players would move their game pieces around the board by rolling dice. Another popular game was Ulamalitzli, which was a ball game played with a rubber ball on a court. Players had to pass the ball around using their hips, shoulders, heads, and knees. Some historians believe this game was used to prepare for warfare. Elderly members of the family were cared for and respected in Aztec society. Punishments for violating laws related to dress were often severe, including death. The word chocolate originates from the Aztec word for chocolate, and the name of the ball game, Ulamalitzli, comes from the Aztec word uli, meaning rubber. Sons of nobles attended separate schools where they learned advanced skills such as writing, laws, and engineering. Students at these schools were often treated more harshly than at regular schools. Slaves were typically treated well and could escape slavery. While the Aztecs are most remembered for their human sacrifices, Aztec culture also brought advancements in agriculture and introduced new foods to the world. Daily life in the Aztec Empire was largely peaceful, with people working, caring for their families, and participating in religious ceremonies. The fortifications in the vassal states of the Aztec Empire provided stability, and farmers lived better than their European counterparts. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next video.